Hey guys, it's Falcon Friday, and I wanted to show you some things about painting today. So here are some things that we've been working on. Okay, so if you don't have paint at your house and you do have markers, here are some things that you could do with your markers. So even if they're dried out. At the top of my paper here, I drew and colored with dried out markers, and then I just took some water and brushed it over top so you can kind of see how that can make it look like paint. On this part, I took a paper towel and I wet down the paper, and then I drew on top of it with the dried out markers. And then here we have some marker that is dried out, that I can take this brush and go over it, and you can see that that really will spread it out and can make some really cool paint. And if you have a marker that is not dried out, you can still do that. And you can experiment with different colors, and if you can spread it further from the line. Even the really dried out stuff can look kind of nice once you get some water on it. Like so. And sometimes you can get some cool stuff to happen in the in-betweens where your colors will start to mix and do some fun things. You can also draw something and then use your brush to fill it in like paint. I do wipe off quite a bit of the water when I work like this. And so when I paint this, you'll see that it starts to kind of fill in the shapes you've made. Sometimes you might have to go over a line more than once to kind of get a little bit more of the ink to come out. And then where you want more color or it to look a little darker, you can do like what I did underneath the tied part here, where you make more lines to get a little more color so it's a little darker. Or you can just straight up paint so that your shape will fill in nicely. Like that. The other thing you can do if you do not have paint at home, but you have dried out markers like I do, is to take a little water, and we've talked about this at school, but you take your dried out markers and you just let them soak. And it takes a little while to get this, but it will pull out whatever little bit of ink is left in there, and it will give you some really nice looking paint. I usually let them sit for at least an hour. And then you want to kind of shake them out a little bit because some of it will suck up into the marker, but it does make some pretty nice paint. You just don't want a ton of water. If you just have one marker, go with very little bit of water, but if you have more than one, you can get a really nice paint color. So there you go. So while my markers are soaking, I wanted to show you one more thing. If you do not have paintbrushes at home, cotton swabs work really well, and you could just use those the same way as you would for a brush. It's pretty light yet, we're getting there. But same idea, and it works much better with actual paint. But once this gets nice and saturated, it will be really good. The other thing that I'd like to give you a pro tip on is that if you are painting at home and you have a candle, do not dip your brush in the candle. Not that I would know anything about that. Bye. We're gonna look at some paintings with salt. And so for this one, I did it on a thicker paper, and I used just regular table salt, the tiny little grain kind of salts. And I did the whole background first and let it dry, and then I painted the tree and stuff afterwards. But you can see the texture from all the little salt pieces on there. That's a pretty subtle one. this was the thicker salt. And this is just on regular printer paper, which you probably will have at home. It still looks pretty. It does get a little bit of wrinkles from the water. But I think this one would be kind of cool to cut out a shape and do something inside of it maybe. But I like how the bigger salts work a little bit better. And if you don't have that, here's some junk mail that I had and I just painted on here. It does show pretty good. It's a little hard to see on the video, but it showed up pretty well with the paint. And then I had talked to you about painting with food coloring. So I wanted to show you. This is the tiny little bit, not very much water I put in there. And this was 1 drop of food coloring, 2 drops of food coloring, and 3 drops of food coloring, so that you can see the difference in that. And that one's still actually drying, so you can see the salt on there, and that is the kosher salt that I showed you before. And the one I think that was the best, as I was thinking about maybe what you would and wouldn't have at home, this is actually the back of a paper plate, and I think this one turned out the coolest. Very like a galaxy or something like that. And that was done with both of the salts. So some of them are the smaller ones and some of them are the bigger ones, but that's kind of what that looks like. So I'm going to show you real quick how you can do this. So I'm gonna get a little water, and here's my paint. I think it shows up the best on the darker colors, so I'm just going to show you with some black today. And you just paint whatever you want to paint. It could be an actual picture, or it could be a background like the tree that I showed you. And then you just take some salt, let me get that here, and sprinkle it where you would like it to be. The places that you sprinkle it will suck up more water, and you can see some of the crystals already look black because it's sucking so much up. So where you have little spaces like this where there's more, there'll be more concentrations, kind of like what we did on here where there's a lot more together. Or you can spread it out however you want. You can sprinkle with your hand or right from the container. But that's basically how you do it. So I hope you enjoy exploring paint at your home, and happy Falcon Friday. Don't forget to email me if you make something awesome.